When it comes to being the CEO and growing into that space, it never stops. It's not as though you reach the point where you're happy with the way that things are and then it's just a case of maintenance, because as soon as you start thinking that you just need to maintain something, that's when some other practice comes and eats your lunch because you're not fighting for it.
Yeah.
So it never ever stops. I think a good way to position it is to say, I need to get very good at thinking, at learning and making decisions. And if I can build up those skills, I'm just going to point those skills where they need to be pointed so that we can keep winning.
Welcome to the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we take regular clinic owners and turn them into cash-based multimillionaire entrepreneurs. Warning, if you're a doctor who listens to this podcast regularly, you will make millions of dollars. Do not listen to this podcast unless you want to be a successful clinic owner who helps thousands of patients achieve their health goals and adds more money than you can imagine to your bank account. You've been warned.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Super Clinic Project Podcast, where we give you the exact tactics, strategies, and mindsets you need to fulfill your destiny by helping thousands of people in your community and dominating your market and your life. I'm one of your hosts, Rory Morgan. I'm here along with Jennifer Gligoric and Tracy Sundkvist, and by the end of today's episode, we're going to know how to be an effective CEO in our small business. So let's jump into the topic. And what we're going to be talking about today is being a CEO, becoming a real CEO in your clinic, in your small business. Most people think that they know what a CEO is. They think that they know what a CEO does, but do you really know how to operate as an effective CEO? So in a small business, in your clinic, there are actually multiple roles that you fill as the owner, right? So every company in the world is not just made up of employees. It's not just made up of executives, right? There's basically 3 tiers of people in any company, right? So if we're talking about General Electric, or we're talking about XYZ Med Spa, or ABC Chiropractic, all 3 of these roles are present. And those 3 roles are shareholders, executives, and employees. And these 3 have to do very different things, because the tricky thing about a small business is that the owner of the business has to fill all of those roles, right? So when you went and filed your LLC or your S Corp or whatever, however you set up your business, you had to indicate when you filled out those documents, who is the shareholder, right? But you don't probably think of yourself day to day as a shareholder in your company. You probably think of yourself as something more generic, like I'm the owner, I'm the entrepreneur. But entrepreneurs of small businesses, we have to recognize that there are 3 distinct roles that we have to fill. So let's talk about the shareholder first. The shareholders of the company are the owners, right? So even if you're a single member LLC, you are still the sole shareholder, right? So you have a shareholder. Your company, XYZ Chiropractic, has a shareholder, and that's you. As the shareholder, that makes you an investor, right? And as an investor, what you are trying to do is you are trying to get a return on your investment. So the shareholders of Coca-Cola, the shareholders of General Electric, they expect a return on their investment. The shareholder does not run the business. The shareholder does not make decisions in the business. The only thing that the shareholders can do is they can change the leadership of the business, essentially, right? So they can replace the board of directors, they can replace the CEO, but they don't run the day-to-day business. So as the shareholder, you have to realize that you expect a return on investment from your CEO, okay? Now, the CEO is the person who reports to the shareholders. In your case, you report to your single member LLC's shareholder, which is going to be you. But it is important that you realize that as the investor in your business, you take off that investor hat and you put on the CEO hat, and you realize that your job as the CEO is to produce a return for your shareholder. So you have to go in there and think like a business person and say, how do I produce the return that my shareholder needs? Because if I don't, I'm accountable to him, to that shareholder or to her, and they're going to fire me and replace me with someone else. That's the way you should be thinking about your job as the CEO, right? And then furthermore, beyond that, the company also has employees, and the employees, they are accountable to the CEO, right? They're going to be accountable to the executives of the company if it's a larger business, right? So their job is to execute the vision and the mission that the CEO has laid out, faithful to the CEO's vision, right? So the CEO sets the vision. He says, this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. This is how we're going to produce a return for the shareholder. And then the employees jump in and they actually do the actions that are going to lead to that. So you take off your CEO hat and you put on your employee hat so that you can execute that CEO's vision. And that's basically the crux of the basics of how a business is set up.
Yeah, Rory, I think you did such a great job of explaining the upward reporting line of a CEO. So in the bigger scheme, a CEO is then responsible to their investors and to their shareholders. But that CEO is also the midpoint for the internal roles. And for small businesses, this often means that the CEO also needs to be the front desk, also needs to be the doctor, also needs to be the salesperson, also needs to be the marketer, is basically the chief cook and bottle washer.
Yeah.
I think the challenge here is that the mindset or the thinking that goes into one of those roles isn't going to work in one of the others. So it's very difficult to transition between these thinking ways of thinking. It kind of makes me think about the 6 thinking hats that De Bono came up with. And he said you can solve problems better, more creatively, you can get more out of your decision-making process if you challenge yourself to think in 6 different ways. So, I mean, you can go and look it up. I don't know all of the colors off by heart, but what it says is you have to think creatively, you have to think from a risk perspective, you have to think from a relationship perspective or a soft empathetic perspective. And this is just in one business owner. So like you say, a lot of different hats.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that concept. That's something I will have to look up as well. But it's certainly, if I were to just take that, right? So I got to think creatively how you might apply that to a marketing perspective, right? If you're the CEO, if you're wearing your CEO hat, how can I be more creative, right? Or if we need to think more analytically, right? Maybe I'm in the salesperson's role. So I take off my CEO hat and I'm the salesperson. And I need to really determine what is the primary objection I'm getting and how can I overcome that objection, right? And we have to look at numbers and we have to figure out how to solve that problem, right? And so different thinking hats applying to different seats within the business. Does that jive with what you're saying, Tracy?
That's exactly it. In fact, you can take a single problem. If your problem is trying to solve objections, you could take it from every single one of the different mindset or approaches. And by doing that, it opens up the potential for stronger solutions, better decisions, because you're taking the mindsets of everything instead of just as the CEO or just as the front desk, which hopefully is not going to happen.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, what I would emphasize to you guys is the importance of really seeing yourself as accountable to someone else, right? So imagine to yourself that it was, your Uncle Joe gave you $100,000 to start your business. And he told you, hey, Rick, you need to produce XYZ return for me. This is what I expect from you. Would you treat your business differently as the CEO if you knew that Uncle Joe, your trusted uncle who believes in you, who cares about you, who knows that he gave you his life savings to start this clinic, would you treat it differently knowing that you've got to produce a return no matter what for Uncle Joe? Would you act differently? Would you show up for your employees differently? Would you sell differently? Right? Would you have a different vision and energy as you approach the business, as you led your team as the CEO?
For a lot
Right.
of people, they're going to be able to take more risks because they know they've got to get it done. Whereas most people give themselves a little bit of slack. And
Yeah.
you don't want to do that. You want to be thinking, and it's very difficult, but you also will think to yourself, I'm going to have to delegate this when you realize you don't have that skill set
Mhm.
and you're not good at it. You know, it's we talk a lot about radical honesty and acceptance is the key to change. You are going to become very good at that if you stay as an entrepreneur and being the CEO of your business, because you have to be brutally honest with
Yeah.
with yourself about where your own limitations are and what you really, really want, no matter which hat that you're in.
Yeah.
I love that, Jennifer, because what really jumps out for me is the practice needs all of these roles to function effectively. And your role as the CEO is responsible to make sure that that happens, even if you're the one who's delivering.
Yep,
Right.
absolutely. We have a core value here. Fire yourself and be an owner.
Yeah.
And that, if your hat is the CEO and you're not doing it, then how are you going to do that so that the shareholders get what they want at the end of the day?
Yeah. 100%. And it actually,
You have to fire yourself if you're not performing and getting results.
yeah, I can't remember. I'll just pick up.
Yeah,
where I
it's
was
just
at.
a fundamental shift in thinking
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
gonna, transform how you show up. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Well, yeah. Thank you for that. So what I want to transition into then is basically what are the primary job functions of a CEO? And as you're listening to this, you can kind of take notes to yourself, or maybe you're watching it on YouTube or something, but you can take notes and say, like, hey, am I doing this? Do I have this skill? Do I have this ability? I know that one of the things that I think really hampers, really holds people back is the fact that all of us, we went to school, right? And we sat in a desk and we listened to someone tell us what to do and tell us what to think, right? And then you go get your advanced degrees and you go to college, and then you're actually in training to become a chiropractor or a nurse or an MD. And it's still more of the same. It's sort of memorization. It's sort of you have to learn the material. And you are never trained at any point to take complete ownership creatively of achieving results. You're taught to just practice something, right? Just go practice through the exercises that you've been trained to do that are supposed to help people. And that has its own value, but it's not very valuable for being a CEO. Because now as a CEO, you have to solve problems to produce a return for your shareholders. And you have to be creative, you have to be proactive, you have to take action, right? So, write down and sit to yourself, like, is this something I've ever thought, like, man, I need this skill set. I have to be good at this. I have to be a better communicator in this way so that I can do this thing. So, job number one of the CEO is to set the vision of the business. And going along with that is to communicate the vision so that the team knows the vision.
And I'd like to
Okay.
talk about that a little bit with culture. When you set the vision of the business, it has to be consistent. So when you're setting this, think about it from all the different hats that you have to wear. And the CEO must practice it too. The shareholders also have to support it and encourage it throughout the business. If there's any disconnect or inconsistency, the team will not get any buy-in for it. And you internally won't have buy-in for it to actually execute it. So if it's a fake vision in any way, you're going to notice that if you do have staff, you're going to have turnover. You're not going to get very positive outcomes. But even if you have no staff, you're going to feel what they call that. Tracy, when you have imposter syndrome, it's going to cause an imposter syndrome inside of you, because what you're saying and what you actually feel in your vision is totally different. So it's really difficult if you're like, I'm just so desperate. I just want some clients. I'm willing to do anything to get clients. Well, what's the vision? We only accept the best people. We're going to have the highest outcome. And you're writing down all this great stuff, but internally you feel desperate. You'll take anyone. You're going to cut corners. You have to actually commit to the vision that you sustain, like that you're doing, whether it's, I want to have, a really good work-life balance here, and I'm going to support it in the staff. Are you supporting that for yourself? Do you get up early? Do you do your, are you supporting it, or have you not taken a vacation in 5 years and you're in total burnout mode? Right. So that's where a part of that radical honesty and acceptance comes in. And then you're going to want to turn this into goals. And I know, Rory, you're very good about that, turning your vision into your goals.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, right? Like the vision is going to be a little bit more, I guess, flowery. It's going to be a little bit more pie in the sky kind of an idea, right? I mean, we absolutely want it to be real. I'm not saying it's not something attainable, but it is a little bit more of an idea. But then you take that idea and you turn it into concrete, measurable, quantifiable numbers. And so you need to have yearly targets. You need to break that yearly down into a quarterly, then down into a monthly, then down all the way down into weekly and daily goals that can be measured, right? And what the CEO is going to do is they're going to assign accountabilities for each quantifiable goal to individual team members. If you're really small, that might mean that you are assigning individual accountabilities to yourself. So as the CEO, you assign it. As the employee for that role, you take accountability for producing it for the CEO.
Yeah. And you have to also remember that even if your vision is, I want to be a leader in my field and I want all my clients to be happy. Well, how do you know that they're happy? How do we track that?
Right.
What way do we track happiness? Or what way do we track that they've hit their goals? Are we asking them to tell us about their goals? Do we have an actual tracker or an app where they put in their little goals? How are we doing this? With everything that you do, no matter how flowery it is, there is an outcome that you can track other than just, did I have enough money to pay my bills this month? And when you really think about it, get that, well, I would know if my clients are happy and with me is if I can get so many upsells or referrals at the end of the month. Let's set a goal for that, and let's keep on doing that. And then let's assign someone who's going to be accountable for that at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Training, like when you talk about like that type of goal, right? Client happiness, right? Some really good things that you can measure is you can measure net promoter score. So you can give your patients a survey. How likely are they to refer their friends or their family to you, right? 5-star reviews you can track. Video testimonials that people give you, you can track that, right? And you can set a goal for what we want our net promoter score to be. We can set a goal for what we want, how many testimonials we're going to get, how many 5-star reviews we're going to get. And then all of a sudden the action in your business becomes much more specific to deliver the experience that's going to lead to those things. So it's very, very crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to make sure that whatever you track, that there is a reward or there is a consequence if it isn't hit, even if you're telling yourself what your reward or consequence will be. So let's say if you're a solo solo physician practice, you have your own solo clinic. If you hit this at the end of the month, what are you going to do? Are you going to take yourself out? Are you going to buy that really nice suit that you wanted? Or are you going to rent a boat for the weekend? Like do something for yourself and think about it in terms of, you want to work for the what's in it for you personally too. And sometimes it's easier if you've started doing that than when you get staff to start thinking about it for them as well. Well, what's in it for them? Why should they help the company set their goals? And when you have that sort of mindset or the negative mindset, well, that means I'll have to work 2 hours extra a month.
Yeah.
Or a week that I don't really want to work that 2 hours extra a week, and whatever it is, there has to be that positive or negative consequence for it so that you are motivated to get to your goal.
Yeah. So
That's
rent
such a
boat,
big,
so-
that's such a big concept, is that you can't give yourself a get out of jail free card.
Right.
You can't rationalize why you couldn't get to these important things because you were too busy seeing patients. I think the whole point of the CEO role is the CEO does not care about excuses. They don't care about external situations or things that happened or blizzards or, staff not showing up. The CEO is ultimately accountable to the goals. And if you're not accountable to the goals, it's unlikely that, not unlikely, but it's so much more difficult to make the changes that you need to make so that you can get better results, which is why we so often see, practice owners who they've been doing it for 14 years, but the past 6 years have been just awful, right?
Yeah.
Because they haven't held themselves accountable. And so their practice is full of holes and problems, and they just kind of don't know where to start.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think that that's all really interesting, but what I'm really interested in is what you said, Jennifer, renting a boat for the weekend. So is yacht parties, is that I hear those are pretty crazy. Is that what you do on the weekends?
Exactly what I do.
Let's
You don't
go.
even want to hear my rendition of I'm on a boat by the Lonely Island. I know every word of that, and it's ridiculous as it sounds.
Okay. Well, I don't want to, we don't want to make these podcast episodes too long. So I'll try to run through some of these other responsibilities a little bit more quickly. The next one I would say is you have to lead trainings for your team. Now, I can't emphasize how important this is enough. Like if your team doesn't see you as the expert, if your team doesn't see you investing time in making them better, if your team doesn't see you putting thought and effort into how you can help them, good luck. Right? It's so crucial. You've got to lead trainings for your teams. Tied to that is having one-on-one accountability meetings with your direct reports, right? So in a larger business, right, you might be meeting with your managers, right? But in a smaller business, you're going to meet directly with, your 1 or 2 employees or 3 or 4, right? In those smaller businesses, they need to be weekly meeting with you and telling you, here's what I accomplished, and you can provide support in that. And we'll talk in later episodes about how to run those types of meetings. But that's just crucial. The next piece that is the CEO's responsibility. By the way, let me just take a pause real quick. Any of those things, have you done those? Have you set the vision, communicated it clearly? Have you turned that into yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly goals? Are you leading regular trainings for your team? Do they see you as investing in them and making them better? Do you have one-on-one accountability meetings with them where they feel supported and challenged by you? Are you doing those things in your business? Because there's some areas of focus right there. The next area is going to be revenue generation. So chief revenue officer. You must be the rainmaker for your business. You're the one who knows how to make it rain. So what falls into revenue generation? It's marketing and sales. So in marketing and sales, The CEO is the CEO because he understands the market better than anyone else. He knows how to speak to it. He knows what it wants. He knows what their problems and their challenges are. He can sense and tell when things are shifting. He understands the clients better than anyone, right? And in order to produce great marketing results, you have to be that person. So how much market research are you doing? How much are you researching what people want? Are you going to the message boards like Reddit to read like what are people saying about who there's like the back pain subreddit? What are the words that they're using about what their struggles are, about what their frustrations are, about their challenges and their pains? Like, do you go check that and understand that? Right? Are you interacting with your patients to figure out how do they feel? How do they express it? How do they communicate it? That's extremely important because then you take that and you build that into your marketing message so that you can speak to the community and meet them where they're at. Right? If you don't have that skill, you have no choice but to invest lots and lots of time. You've got to invest a ton of time to build skills and money into that, right? You've got to start making videos and paying money for ads, right? And guess what? A lot of those videos aren't going to be very good and they're not going to produce a very good result. But that's part of the process because you have to become the rainmaker. If you ever want to get to that place where you achieve that vision, you've got to become that rainmaker who can make it rain for your company. Same thing applies for sales, right? You have to be the best at understanding how to persuade and influence people as they come through your process. You have to be the best at writing the script. You have to be the best sales trainer when it comes to start training other people. Nobody can be a better salesperson than you in your company. Now, that doesn't happen by only hiring people that suck. You're not going to have a very, very good company that way. You need to achieve that by you being so damn excellent that nobody could ever be as good as you. These are primary chief responsibilities of a CEO.
Rory, I think as we share this, our doctors, practitioners, they're going to learn just how big of a role this CEO thing is, right? It's a full-time job.
Yeah. Yep. And that's I think that's really what we're trying to do is break some misconceptions here because I think we have a lot of people that tell us, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm the CEO. I'm the CEO, right? And in their mind, what they think that means is, well, I don't really have to work anymore, and I can live the laptop lifestyle. Because that's the shareholder. The shareholder, the investor, can do that. The CEO is the busiest person in the company by far. They have the most accountability. They work the hardest. They
Absolutely.
have, yeah.
Because in addition to being the visionary for the business and being solely responsible for driving the rainmaker skills of revenue generation and marketing and sales, you also have to be the chief reminding officer, which is meaning the CEO has to be very disciplined because most employees, even if you hire very experienced ones, they don't know how you want to have things done. You're the one who has to keep them constantly reselling them and reminding them to follow your processes, keeping them on task, having those one-on-ones saying, remember, this is a core value of us, but this is what happened this week. How did that align? Okay, how did it not align? How can we get back on track? Those are the things that you're consistently having to do as a CEO to drive the company where you want the company to go, and you also have to have the numbers. CEOs have multiple dashboards. They're obsessed with data. Even if you don't like numbers, you're going to have to at least learn how to respect numbers enough and to use them to make the decisions so that you can use numbers to tell the team what they can do in a very empirical, black and white sort of way, which is very transparent for the team. It makes them feel safe. Well, if I hit this number, I'll be safe. I'll have a job. I'll keep my benefits, and they can be in a really good place with, with that sort of thing. And, you also how you take input from that. Like Rory, how would you do it for that? I know I'm trying to.
Or taking input from numbers, you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, right? Like once you have the data, which you're obsessed with the data, you make decisions off of the data, that informs your decisions, right? And this is a key thing that I see all the time with small business owners. They don't make decisions. And what CEOs are supposed to do is they're supposed to make decisions. And they tell the team and they set expectations for the team as far as what the team is going to get done, right? As a business gets larger and larger, you can take more input, but you have to set the expectations when you're smaller that you make the decisions, you tell the team where to go, how to do it, and they are on board with it because they know your vision, right? The next thing would be hiring and attracting talent. CEO, you've got to build a culture. If you ever want to get to the point where you can maybe live that laptop lifestyle, you can be just the shareholder. If you'd ever like to be there, you are going to have a lot of talent in your team. That first 10, 15 employees that you hire has to be awesome. And you have to put in so much work. You have to conduct so many interviews. You have to be so charismatic, putting out content for your company that people are attracted and they want to work for you, right? Absolutely crucial. And I would say those are really the big things that most people just, they just forget about. And they don't think like this is my role as the CEO, but I would say those are the biggest things. So we might just talk on one or two very quick mindset shifts that you need to think about. Number one, your goals and your vision, they probably aren't big enough. If your vision isn't big enough that other people's visions for their own lives can fit inside of your vision, that your vision is actually going to incorporate their vision for their life, you're never going to have talented people working for you, and you're always going to be stuck working in your business just like it's a dead end job. You're never going to have a hope of anything better.
Absolutely. And this
Um,
one is so important. So
yeah,
make sure your vision and your culture are expansive enough that you can have a lot of different what's in it for me's, not just the what's in it for you or what's in
right.
it for the shareholder, the CEO. It's got to be the what's in it for the front desk, the whole thing.
Yep. Yeah. And then I think this is the hardest part for people to get through, right? This gets into imposter syndrome and people kind of like not taking action, even though they need to take action. But as a CEO, you have to become what you are not right now. So if you're, let's just say your vision is to have an 8-figure business. So as an easy example, well, you don't have an 8-figure business right now. You've never run a team that big. You've never managed that much revenue. You've never dealt with people that are talented enough that you will have to have employed on your team who are that talented. You've never figured out how to manage people who are that talented, right? All of these are skills that you're going to have to learn, right? You also don't have the financial skills. You don't have the tax strategies to avoid paying all your money to the government. There are so many things that you are going to be afraid, like, oh my gosh, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that. And this is where so many people shrink back, is they don't realize that reaching goals is a matter of adding skills and fundamentally having the belief that I can add more skills. I'm not a finished product. If I need to learn it, I'm going to learn it. I'm going to learn it fast. I'm going to learn it effectively. So the
I think,
CEO, yeah,
yeah,
but the
Rory, it really
CEO
stands
always
out
ends
to
up
me.
being the bottleneck, right? Because they don't grow fast enough. But go ahead, Tracy.
No, I'm just thinking when it comes to being the CEO and growing into that space, it never stops. It's not as though you reach the point where you're happy with the way that things are, and then it's just a case of maintenance. Because as soon as you start thinking that you just need to maintain something, that's
Mhm.
when some other practice comes and eats your lunch because you're not fighting for it.
Yeah.
So it never ever stops. I think a good way to position it is to say, I need to get very good at thinking, at learning, and making decisions. And if
Yeah.
I can build up those skills, I'm just going to point those skills where they need to be pointed so that
Yeah.
we can keep winning. And it doesn't matter if none of these things are being implemented right now. All it takes is for you to have the awareness of where the gaps are and then start closing those gaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the interest of time, let's wrap this up. I'm sure we could probably talk for another 20, 30 minutes or hours maybe. But if you're not subscribed to the podcast, guys, Jennifer, can you give them the website address for that?
Yes. Just go to superclinicproject.com. When you're on there, you can join our free school. You also can get 2 weeks free on our mastermind. So if you like this and you're like, God, these are such great notes, and you also want to see like extra breakout sessions, sometimes on our podcast, we get so passionate about something. We have so many notes, we can't fit it all in. And we'll do extra breakout sessions and we'll post those on our school for our mastermind. So if that's something of interest for you, then go on that, as well as we have downloads and PDFs and everything on that. So that's superclinicproject.com.
You heard it, guys, superclinicproject.com, and we will wrap it up and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Super Clinic Project podcast. If you like what you hear, subscribe and stay tuned for further episodes of the Super Clinic Project podcast.